everyone, welcome back to my channel. In the last episode, I talked about the upcoming US elections impact on the Federal Reserve policy and its independency. In this episode, we delve into the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict and its impact on the global oil prices and the economy. We explore how the conflict reverberates through the oil prices and what countries are doing to mitigate these effects through the renewable resources. Let's start with a bit of history. The 1967 war marked a significant turning point in the global oil market. In reaction to the June 1967 war, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Libya, and Algeria banned oil shipments to the United States, United Kingdom, and West Germany. This reorganization of oil flows was complicated by the closure of the Suez Canal, yet newly deployed supertankers helped mitigate the disruption. Despite the initial shock, the embargo ultimately failed to create a lasting economic impact because oil was abundant and cheap, and the United States could increase its production to make up for the shortfall. However, the global oil market has changed significantly after the 1967 embargo. Due to the rapid growth in oil demand, U.S. spare oil production capacity was quickly consumed in late 1960s and early 1970s. By 1970, the United States can no longer be the world's safety valve for oil supply disruption as it has become a net importer of oil. This shift has made the world dependent on the Middle Eastern oil, which met 2/3 of the growing demand growth of the oil between 1960s and 1970s.
It is an all-out war. That's how Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan describes an invasion of the Golan Heights and the east bank of the Suez by Syria and Egypt. The surprise attacks came early this morning in the air and on the ground.
The 1973 Yom Kippur War painted a very different picture. When the war erupted, the Arab states used the oil weapons again, imposing an embargo on countries supporting Israel. At that time, the market was much tighter and more dependent on the Middle Eastern oil. The embargo cut oil supply by 4.4 million barrels per day, causing the oil prices to quadruple, leading to global economic turmoil. The 1973 oil shock highlighted the powerful role of oil in geopolitics. It triggered stagflation, high inflation, and unemployment across industrialized countries. This period underscored the importance of energy diversification, a lesson that remains crucial today. The 1973 oil embargo also led to significant changes in global energy policies. Countries began to invest more in alternative energy sources and improve energy efficiency. The creation of the International Energy Agency in 1974 aimed to enhance energy security among oil-consuming nations, encouraging them to hold strategic oil reserves and coordinate energy policies. The impact of these events was not just economic but also geopolitical. The realization that energy supplies could be weaponized led to a more strategic approach to energy security globally. This era saw the beginning of significant investments in energy infrastructure and the diversification of energy sources to prevent such vulnerabilities in the future. Moreover, the lessons from these crises led to the development of strategic petroleum reserves in many countries. These reserves act as a buffer against future disruptions, providing a critical safety net in times of crisis. The United States, for instance, established the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in 1975, which remains the largest emergency oil supply in the world. Fast forward to today, the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict continues to have economic ripples. Regional instability could escalate to broader Middle Eastern instabilities, impacting global oil prices. The fear is that the conflict could join in more countries, further impacting global oil supply. Let's explore 3 possible scenarios of the current conflict's impact on global oil prices as analyzed by Bloomberg Economics. In October 2023, Bloomberg Economics examined the current conflicts between Israel and Palestine in three possible scenarios. In the first scenario, where the conflict is confined to the Gaza area, they concluded that the impact on the global oil prices and economy would be minimal. Similar to the 2014 conflict, tighter enforcement of U.S. sanctions on Iran's oil could add $3 to $4 to oil prices. This scenario could see localized economic disruption but minimal global impact. It would also include increased military spending by Israel and neighboring countries, which could lead to higher government deficits and impact local economies. The localized economic stress, while significant, wouldn't necessarily disrupt global oil supplies substantially. In the second scenario, which they called proxy war, the conflict spreads to Lebanon and Syria, involving Hezbollah and other militias. Then it means that it's essentially a proxy war between Iran and Israel. This could cause a 10% increase in oil prices and a risk of move in financial markets, similar to the Arab Spring. Global growth could drop by 0.3 percentage points, losing about $300 billion in output. A proxy war could destabilize the broader Middle East, affecting not just oil prices but also shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world's oil passes. Disruptions here could have cascading effect on global trade and energy markets. The third scenario, which is the worst scenario, is an Iran-Israel war. In the most severe scenario, a direct conflict between Iran and Israel could trigger a global recession. Oil prices might surge to $150 per barrel, causing a 1 percentage point drop in global growth. This will lead to significant economic downturns comparable to the worst growth periods outside of the 2020 COVID crisis and the 2008 financial crisis. The interconnected nature of the global markets today means such a conflict would have far-reaching consequences. Now, this scenario would also likely result in massive disruption to global supply chains, as heightened security risks would impact transportation and logistics industries worldwide. The spike in oil prices would exacerbate inflationary pressures globally, affecting everything from transportation costs to the price of goods and services. To mitigate dependence on volatile oil market, countries are increasingly investing in renewable energy sources. Renewable energy sources not only reduce reliance on oil, but also offers a more stable and sustainable energy supply. Germany's energy win or energy transition is one of the most ambitious efforts to shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Since the early 2000s, Germany has invested heavily in wind and solar power, aiming to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions and reliance on imported oil and gas. Clean power sources accounted for 63.4% of total German electricity generation from January through May in 2024. According to the German Federal Network Agency's electricity market data platform SMART, significantly reducing its vulnerability to geopolitical oil shocks. Innovation in battery storage and grid infrastructure are critical to integrating more renewable energy into the grid. Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada, for instance, is one of the world's largest producers of lithium-ion batteries, essential for storing solar and wind energy. Similarly, advancements in smart grid technology help balance supply and demand, making renewable energy more reliable. Electric vehicles are another key component of reducing oil dependency. As of April 2024, zero-emission cars accounted for 89.4% of all new car sales in Norway. When including plug-in hybrids, the proportion of new cars with a charging connection rises to 91%. International cooperation is vital for a sustainable energy future. The Paris Agreement aims to limit global warming by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Countries are also working together on projects like the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor in France, which aims to demonstrate the feasibility of nuclear fusion as a large-scale energy source. The current Israel-Palestine conflict underscores the fragility of global economic stability in the face of geopolitical tensions. Whether the conflict remains localized or escalates into a broader regional war, the economic impact could be profound, affecting everything from oil prices to global growth. Understanding these potential economic ramifications helps policymakers, businesses, and individuals prepare and mitigate risks. By investing in renewable energy and international cooperation, we can build a more resilient and sustainable future. The transition to a sustainable energy future is not just about mitigating climate change, it's also about enhancing global security and economic stability. By reducing dependency on volatile regions for energy supplies, we can create a more predictable and secure economic environment. Thank you very much for joining me in this episode through history and economics. If you like this episode, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more economic and financial analysis. I look forward to speaking to you in my next episode.
The scale of destruction from Saturday's raid is overwhelming.
The airstrikes were everywhere. The people were running in fear.
This eyewitness describes the moment the Israel Defense Forces moved in by air and on foot for a hostage rescue mission. She says she saw planes overhead and buildings razed to the ground without warning.
My heart and even every heart of people here in Gaza is full of endless sadness, endless sadness.
The cost of Israel's mission to save 4 hostages, highlighted by Gaza's health ministry. It claims 274 Palestinians were killed, another almost 700 injured. Numbers CBC News can't verify, but one of Gaza's few functioning hospitals was inundated with patients. This Palestinian woman says a rocket hit her home, killing her 2 cousins. They did nothing, she says. They were sitting at home.